Dear friends, welcome to Diary of World War II, where we delve into the personal stories that shaped the greatest conflict in human history. Today, we journey to the Eastern Front, to the brutal, unforgiving landscape of Stalingrad through the eyes of a German soldier. This is the story of William Hoffman, a young man who, like millions, was swept into the maelstrom of war, his hopes and dreams slowly crushed by the relentless reality of battle. His diary, a stark and poignant record, reveals the chilling transformation from fervent optimism to utter despair as the German Sixth Army found itself trapped in the inferno of Stalingrad. In the summer of 1942, the German war machine seemed unstoppable. Operation Blue, the drive towards the oil-rich Caucasus and the strategic city of Stalingrad, was in full swing. For soldiers like William Hoffman, the promise of swift victory and a triumphant return home was a powerful motivator. They believed in the Führer, in the might of the Wehrmacht, and in the inevitable collapse of the Soviet Union. On July 29, 1942, William Hoffman picked up his pen and wrote, "Today, after we had a bath, the company commander told us that if our future operations are as successful, we shall soon reach the Volga, take Stalingrad, and then the war will inevitably be over soon. Perhaps we shall be home for Christmas." This entry captures the prevailing mood of the German forces. A sense of invincibility, a belief that the end was in sight, fueled their advance. The vastness of the Soviet Union, its seemingly endless resources, were yet to fully register. The propaganda machine had done its work, painting a picture of a collapsing enemy. Just days later, on August 2nd, Hoffman recorded his thoughts on the vast Russian lands. What great spaces the Soviets occupy, what fertile fields there are to be had after the war is over. We only need to finish it quickly. I believe the Führer will bring everything to a successful conclusion. The promise of Lebensraum, living space in the East, was a core tenet of Nazi ideology. For soldiers, it translated into a tangible reward for their sacrifices: fertile lands, a new future. This belief system, coupled with early successes, created a powerful sense of purpose. By August 10th, the Führer's direct orders were being read to the troops, reinforcing their conviction. Hoffman's next entry read, "The Führer's orders have been read to us. He expects victory from us. We are all convinced that they cannot stop us." The unwavering confidence, the collective belief in their own might, was palpable. They were the conquerors, the vanguard of a new order. But even as they pushed deeper, the first cracks in this facade of invincibility began to appear. The vastness of the land, the resilience of the enemy, were forces they had underestimated. On August 12th, Hoffman noted a new kind of resistance. "We are advancing towards Stalingrad along the railway line. Yesterday, Russian Katyusha, rocket launchers, and then tanks held up our regiment. The Russians are throwing in their last forces," Captain Werner explained to me. "Large-scale reinforcements are coming up for us, and the Russians will be defeated. This morning, outstanding soldiers were decorated. Shall I go back to Elsa without any decorations? I believe that for Stalingrad, the Führer will decorate even me." The Katyushas, or Stalin's organs, as they were terrifyingly known, were a new and devastating weapon. Their psychological impact was immense. Yet the German command and Hoffman's captain dismissed these as the enemy's last forces. The desire for personal glory, for medals to bring home to loved ones like Elsa, still burned brightly. Stalingrad was not just a strategic objective, it was a path to honor. The advance continued, and by August 23rd, news of significant progress reached Hoffman. His next entry read, "Great news. To the north of Stalingrad, our troops have reached the Volga and captured part of the city. The Russians have two alternatives, either to flee across the Volga or to surrender." Our company interpreter interrogated a captured Russian officer. He was wounded, but stated that the Russians would fight for Stalingrad to the last cartridge. Something incomprehensible is happening, in fact. In the north, our troops capture a part of Stalingrad and reach the Volga, but in the south, the doomed divisions continue resisting with bitterness. Fanaticism. The initial triumph was tempered by a disturbing revelation. The Russians were not fleeing. The captured officers' defiant words and the bitter resistance in the south hinted at a resolve the Germans had not anticipated. Hoffman, like many, struggled to comprehend this fanaticism, unable to reconcile it with their belief in Russian weakness. Days later, on August 27th, the sheer destructive power unleashed upon Stalingrad became evident. Hoffman wrote, "A continuous bombardment from all sides. We are advancing slowly, less than 20 miles to go to reach Stalingrad. During the day we can see the smoke from the fires, at night the red glow. They say the city is on fire. They say that, by order of the Führer, our Luftwaffe has reduced it to fire. That is what the Russians need, to stop them from resisting." The city was burning, a deliberate act of terror and destruction. The belief was that this would break the Russian will to fight. Instead, it would turn Stalingrad into a hellish landscape, a labyrinth of rubble and fire that would favor the defenders. By September 4th, the German forces were closing in, the city's fate seemingly sealed. Hoffman's next entry read, "We are being sent north along the front towards Stalingrad. We marched all night and, at dawn, reached Voroponovo station. We can already see the smoking city. It is comforting to think that the end of the war is approaching. That is what everyone says. If only the days and nights would pass more quickly." The sight of the smoking city, so close, brought a renewed sense of hope for an end to the ordeal. The longing for home, for peace, was growing. But the reality of urban warfare, of fighting for every street and every building, was about to shatter that hope. On September 5th, the direct engagement began. Hoffman recorded, "Our regiment received the order to attack Sadovaya Station. That is practically Stalingrad already. Are the Russians really thinking of resisting inside the city itself? We had no peace all night because of Russian artillery and planes. Many wounded are being brought in. God protect me." The question, are the Russians really thinking of resisting inside the city itself, reveals a lingering disbelief. The Germans had expected a swift collapse, not a desperate defense of every inch of ground. The constant shelling and air attacks and the sight of the wounded began to chip away at their morale. The fighting intensified. On September 8th, Hoffman wrote with growing concern, 2 days of uninterrupted combat. The Russians are defending themselves with insane stubbornness. Our regiment has lost many men because of the Katyushas, which launch a terrible fire. I have been sent to work at Battalion HQ. It must be my mother's prayers that have taken me out of the company trenches." The insane stubbornness of the Russians was a recurring theme. The heavy losses from the Katyushas were taking their toll. Hoffman's transfer to Battalion HQ, while a temporary reprieve from the front lines, also signaled the severity of the fighting and the need for every available man. He attributed his survival to his mother's prayers, a common sentiment among soldiers facing unimaginable horrors. By September 11th, they were deep within the city's embrace. Hoffman's next entry read, "Our battalion is fighting in the suburbs of Stalingrad. We can already see the Volga. Shots and explosions are happening all the time. Wherever one looks, there is fire and flames. Russian cannons and machine guns are firing from inside the burning city. Fanatics." The Volga, once a symbol of victory, was now a backdrop to a scene of utter devastation. The city was a cauldron of fire and death. The term fanatics reappeared, a desperate attempt to categorize an enemy whose resolve defied German understanding. September 13th proved to be an unlucky day indeed. Hoffman recorded, "A unlucky number. This morning, Katyusha attacks caused heavy losses to the company. 27 dead and 50 wounded. The Russians are fighting desperately like wild beasts. They do not surrender. They approach and throw grenades. Lieutenant Krauss was killed yesterday, and there is no company commander left. The sheer scale of casualties, 27 dead and 50 wounded in a single attack, was devastating. The Russians' close-quarters combat, their refusal to surrender, and their use of grenades painted a picture of brutal, desperate fighting. The loss of Lieutenant Krauss and the absence of a company commander highlighted the chaos and the rapid attrition of leadership. The battle for the grain elevator became a symbol of the brutal urban warfare. On September 16th, Hoffman wrote, "Our battalion, with tank support, is attacking the grain elevator, from which thick smoke is coming. The grain is burning, and the Russians seem to have set it on fire themselves." Barbarism. The battalion is suffering heavy losses. Fewer than 60 men remain in each company. The elevator is not occupied by men, but by demons whom no flame or bullet can destroy. The grain elevator, a massive concrete structure, became a fortress. The Russians, burning their own grain to deny it to the enemy, were seen as barbaric. The description of the defenders as demons reflects the German soldiers' growing terror and incomprehension. The casualty rate was horrific, with companies reduced to mere platoons. The fight for the elevator dragged on. On September 18th, Hoffman recorded, "The fight continues inside the elevator. The Russians inside are doomed. The battalion commander says the commissars have ordered those men to die in the elevator. If all the buildings in Stalingrad are defended like this, none of our soldiers will return to Germany. I received a letter from Elsa today. She awaits me at home when victory is won." A chilling realization began to set in. If every building was defended with such ferocity, the cost would be unbearable. The battalion commander's words about the commissars ordering men to die underscored the perceived fanaticism. The letter from Elsa, a beacon of hope from home, now served as a stark reminder of the growing chasm between the reality of Stalingrad and the expectations of victory. The relentless battle continued. On September 20th, Hoffman wrote, "The battle for the elevator continues. The Russians are shooting from all sides. We stay in our basement. It's impossible to go out into the street. Sergeant Major Nuschke was killed today while running across a street. Poor fellow, he has 3 children." Life in Stalingrad was reduced to a subterranean existence, moving from basement to basement. The death of Sergeant Major Nuschke, a father of 3, brought the human cost into sharp focus, a stark reminder of the personal tragedies unfolding amidst the larger conflict. Finally, on September 22nd, the elevator fell. Hoffman's next entry read, "Russian resistance in the elevator has been broken. Our troops are advancing towards the Volga. Our older soldiers had never experienced such bitter fighting." The capture of the elevator was a victory, but a Pyrrhic one. Even the seasoned veterans who had fought across Europe were shocked by the ferocity of Stalingrad. The advance towards the Volga continued, but the cost was immense, and the enemy's spirit remained unbroken. The nature of the fighting evolved. On September 26th, Hoffman recorded a new, insidious form of resistance. "Our regiment is involved in constant heavy fighting. After the elevator was taken, the Russians continued to defend themselves with the same stubbornness. You don't see them. They have settled in houses and basements and shoot from all sides, including from the rear. Barbarians, they use gangster methods. In the blocks captured 2 days ago, Russian soldiers emerged from somewhere, and the fighting rekindled with new vigor. Our men are being killed not only at the front line, but also in the rear, in buildings we had already occupied. The Russians have completely stopped surrendering. If we capture any prisoner, it is because he's seriously wounded and cannot move on his own. Stalingrad is hell. Those who are only wounded are lucky. They will undoubtedly return home and celebrate victory with their families." This entry paints a terrifying picture of urban guerrilla warfare. The enemy was everywhere, unseen, striking from unexpected quarters. The term gangster methods reflects the German frustration with an enemy who refused to fight by conventional rules. The chilling observation that the Russians had completely stopped surrendering and that only the gravely wounded were captured underscored the brutal, no-quarter nature of the battle. The bitter irony that being wounded was now considered lucky speaks volumes about the hellish conditions. Despite the immense cost, a partial victory was achieved. On September 28th, Hoffman wrote, "Our regiment, and the entire division, today is celebrating victory. With our tank crews, we took the southern part of the city and reached the Volga. We paid dearly for this victory. In 3 weeks, we occupied about 5.5 square miles. The commander congratulated us on our victory. A victory that cost 3 weeks of brutal fighting for a mere 5.5 square miles. The congratulations from the commander must have rung hollow against the backdrop of such heavy losses. The initial optimism was now replaced by a grim acknowledgement of the immense price of every small gain. As October began, the focus shifted to the industrial heart of Stalingrad. On October 3rd, Hoffman recorded, "After marching during the night, we settled in a bush-covered valley. Apparently, we're going to attack the factories. We can clearly see the chimneys. Behind them is the Volga. We have entered a new area. It was already night, but we saw many crosses with our helmets on top. Have we lost so many men? Cursed Stalingrad." The sight of countless graves, marked by German helmets, was a stark and undeniable testament to the casualties. The question, "Have we lost so many men?" was no longer rhetorical. It was a desperate cry of realization. The city, once a symbol of victory, was now cursed Stalingrad. The attack on the Barricadi settlement began. On October 4th, Hoffman wrote, "Our regiment is attacking the Barricadi settlement. Many Russians armed with submachine guns have appeared. Where are they bringing so many people from?" The endless supply of Russian soldiers, seemingly appearing from nowhere, was a constant source of frustration and dread. The German belief in the enemy's dwindling resources was being shattered daily. The fighting for the factories was a meat grinder. On October 5th, Hoffman recorded, "Our battalion advanced 4 times and was stopped every time. Russian snipers hit anyone who carelessly exposes himself from behind cover. The futility of repeated frontal assaults against entrenched defenders, coupled with the deadly accuracy of Russian snipers, led to mounting casualties and dwindling morale. Every movement was a risk, every exposed moment potentially fatal. By October 10th, the close-quarters nature of the fighting meant even German air superiority was negated. Hoffman's next entry read, "The Russians are so close that our planes cannot bomb them. We are preparing for a decisive attack. The Führer has ordered that all of Stalingrad be taken as quickly as possible." The Führer's direct order for a swift capture of Stalingrad, despite the impossible conditions, put immense pressure on the exhausted troops. The decisive attack was another desperate gamble, another wave of men thrown into the inferno. On October 14th, the sheer destructive power of the German forces was unleashed. Hoffman wrote, "It has been something incredible since morning. Our planes and our artillery hammer the Russian positions for hours on end. Everything one sees is being wiped off the face of the earth. A massive bombardment, an attempt to obliterate the enemy and clear the path. Yet, even this unprecedented display of firepower would prove insufficient against the determined defenders hidden in the rubble." Days later, on October 22nd, the grim reality of the factory fighting became clear. Hoffman recorded, "Our regiment failed to break through the factory. We lost many men. Every time you move, you have to jump over bodies. You can hardly breathe during the day. There is no place or people to remove the bodies, so they lie there, rotting. Who would have thought 3 months ago that instead of the joy of victory, we would have to endure such sacrifices and tortures with no end in sight?" The soldiers are calling Stalingrad the mass grave of the Wehrmacht. Very few men remain in the companies. We were told that we would soon be withdrawn to regain strength. This entry marks a profound shift. The dream of victory had vanished, replaced by the nightmare of endless sacrifice and torture. The city was literally a mass grave, the air thick with the stench of death. The hope of being withdrawn, of escaping this hell, was a desperate flicker. The term mass grave of the Wehrmacht was a chilling indictment from within. The barricade factory eventually fell, but the breakthrough to the Volga remained elusive. On October 27th, Hoffman wrote, "Our troops captured the entire barricade factory, but we could not break through to the Volga. The Russians are not men, but creatures of cast iron. They never get tired and are not afraid of fire. We are completely exhausted. Our regiment now barely has the strength of a single company. Russian artillery from the other side of the Volga does not let you even raise your head." The enemy was no longer just fanatics or demons. They were creatures of cast iron, seemingly impervious to fatigue and fear. The German regiment, once a formidable fighting force, was now reduced to the strength of a single company. The constant shelling from across the Volga, a constant reminder of their exposed position, added to the relentless torment. The psychological toll was immense. On October 28th, Hoffman recorded a chilling sentiment. Every soldier sees himself as a doomed man. The only hope is to be wounded and sent to the rear. The desire for injury, for a ticket out of Stalingrad, was a desperate measure, a sign of utter despair. The will to fight, to win, was being replaced by a primal urge for survival at any cost. As November began, the futility of their attacks continued. On November 3rd, Hoffman wrote, "In the last few days, our battalion tried several times to attack the Russian positions, without success. In this sector too, the Russians do not let you raise your head. There have been several cases of self-inflicted wounds and malingering among the men. Every day I write 2 or 3 reports about this." The desperation had reached a point where soldiers were deliberately wounding themselves or feigning illness to escape the front lines. Hoffman, now at HQ, was tasked with reporting these acts, a grim testament to the collapse of morale and discipline. On November 10th, a letter from home brought a painful contrast. Hoffman's next entry read, "A letter from Elsa today. Everyone expects us to be home for Christmas. In Germany, everyone believes we already control Stalingrad. How mistaken they are. If only they could see what Stalingrad has done to our army." The stark disconnect between the propaganda-fueled optimism at home and the horrific reality on the ground was agonizing. The thought of Christmas, once a symbol of hope, now served as a cruel reminder of the impossible expectations. Hoffman wished his loved ones could see the truth, the devastation Stalingrad had wrought upon the Wehrmacht. The fighting continued, with no end in sight. On November 18th, Hoffman recorded, "Our tank attack yesterday was unsuccessful. After the attack, the field was covered with dead. Another failed attack, another field of corpses. The pattern of futile assaults and heavy losses was unbroken. Then, on November 21st, the world turned upside down." Hoffman wrote with growing desperation, "The Russians have gone on the offensive along the entire front. Heavy fighting is taking place. So this is it. The Volga, victory, and soon we would be home with our families. Obviously, we will only see them now in the other world." The Russian counter-offensive, Operation Uranus, had begun. The dream of victory, of returning home, was shattered. The chilling realization that they would only see their families in the other world marked the complete collapse of hope. The German 6th Army was being encircled. By November 29th, the encirclement was complete. Hoffman recorded, "We are surrounded. It was announced this morning that the Führer said, 'The army can trust me to do everything necessary to ensure supplies and quickly break the encirclement.'" Trapped in the Kessel, the pocket, the soldiers clung to the Führer's promise of relief and supplies. It was their last desperate hope. But the reality of the situation, the vastness of the Russian steppes, and the strength of the Soviet forces made such a promise increasingly hollow. As December began, starvation set in. On December 3rd, Hoffman wrote, "We are receiving starvation rations and waiting for the rescue promised by the Führer. I send letters home, but there is no reply." The starvation rations were a grim reality. The lack of replies to letters home underscored their isolation, cut off from the world, slowly starving in the frozen wasteland. The situation worsened dramatically. On December 7th, Hoffman recorded, "Rations have been cut to such an extent that the soldiers are suffering terribly from hunger. They are distributing a single old loaf of bread for 5 men. A single loaf of bread for 5 men. The horror of starvation, a slow, agonizing death, was now their constant companion. By December 11th, the questions that plagued every soldier were stark and existential. Hoffman's next entry read, "3 questions torment every soldier and officer. When will the Russians stop shooting and let us sleep in peace, if only for one night? How and with what are we to fill our empty stomachs, which, apart from 100 to 200 grams of bread, receive practically nothing? And when will Hitler take decisive measures to free our armies from the encirclement? Sleep, food, and rescue. These were the fundamental needs, denied to them in their frozen hell. The questions were no longer about victory, but about basic survival and the agonizing wait for a leader who seemed increasingly distant and detached from their suffering. The hunger drove men to desperate measures." On December 14th, Hoffman wrote, "Everyone is tormented by hunger. Frozen potatoes are the best meal, but digging them out of the frozen earth under Russian gunfire is not easy at all." Frozen potatoes, dug from the earth under enemy fire, became a luxury. The dignity of man was stripped away, replaced by a primal struggle for sustenance. A glimmer of hope appeared. On December 18th, Hoffman recorded, "The officers told the soldiers today to prepare for action. General Manstein is approaching Stalingrad from the south with strong troops. This news rekindled hope in the soldiers' hearts. God, let it be true." The news of General Manstein's relief attempt, Operation Winter Storm, was a desperate lifeline. Hope, almost extinguished, flickered back to life. The prayer, "God, let it be true," was a testament to their profound need for salvation. But the wait was agonizing. On December 21st, Hoffman wrote, "We are waiting for the order, but for some reason it is slow in coming. Is it not true about Manstein? This is worse than any torture." The delay, the uncertainty, was a new form of torture, perhaps even worse than the physical suffering. The fragile hope was already beginning to fray. Christmas Eve brought no relief, only deepening dread. On December 23rd, Hoffman recorded, "Still no orders. Was it all a bluff with Manstein? Or was he defeated in the approaches to Stalingrad?" The questions were no longer prayers, but accusations. The belief in rescue was crumbling. Christmas Day brought the final, crushing blow. On December 25th, Hoffman wrote, "The Russian radio announced Manstein's defeat. Before us is only death or captivity." The Russian radio, a cruel messenger, delivered the news that sealed their fate. Manstein's relief effort had failed. There was no escape. Only 2 choices remained: death or captivity. The final entry, on December 26th, paints a horrifying picture of utter collapse. Hoffman's last words read, "The horses have already been eaten. I would eat a cat. They say its meat is tasty. The soldiers look like corpses or lunatics looking for something to put in their mouths. They no longer duck when Russian shells fall. They have no strength to walk, flee, or hide. Cursed be this war." This is the last known entry from William Hoffman's diary. The descent into cannibalism, the transformation of men into walking corpses, the utter indifference to death. It is a testament to the absolute horror of Stalingrad. The final, desperate cry, "Cursed be this war," encapsulates the profound disillusionment and suffering of a soldier whose initial optimism had been utterly annihilated. William Hoffman, like hundreds of thousands of others, perished in the Stalingrad Kessel. His diary, a small, personal record, stands as a powerful and enduring testament to the human cost of war, a stark reminder of how quickly dreams of glory can turn into a nightmare of despair. His words echo across the decades, a chilling voice from the frozen hell of Stalingrad, reminding us of the fragility of hope and the enduring tragedy of conflict. Thank you for joining us on Diary of World War II. Join us next time as we uncover another personal story from the annals of history. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video.